The Gravity Gardeners. Chapter 2, The Pulse and the Pattern. The deep, pained groan of the infected gardener echoed in Aris's mind long after the creature had retreated into the fungal forests, its movements now a stuttering, unbalanced shuffle. The harmonious thrum of the planet had gained a dissonant counter-rhythm, a vibration of distress that set Aris's teeth on edge. Back inside the horizon's whisper, the filtered air was a blessing. He stripped off his suit, the cloying, rotten sweet scent of the blight seeming to have permeated the very fabric. Whisper full decontamination protocol on the EVA gear, and give me everything you have on that glitter blight. Decontamination initiated. Data on parasitic fungus is limited. Extrapolating from initial scans, reproduction rate is exponential. Method of gravitic disruption is unprecedented. It appears to feed on the energy of the mycelial network itself. It's a vampire, Aris murmured, pulling up the holographic planetary model. The Azure Plateau was a tiny blue dot in a sea of swirling organic data, and it's got a taste for gods. He zoomed in on the area where he'd witnessed the infection. We need to understand the system before we can fix it. I want a full sensor suite deployed. Seismic monitors, gravimetric scanners, broad-spectrum resonance receivers. Let's map this world's heartbeat. For the next 48 hours, Aris became a whirlwind of activity. He deployed a network of spider-like sensor probes from the Whisper, their delicate legs sinking into the springy fungal cap. He sent micro-drones buzzing into the valleys, their cameras capturing the staggering scale of the fungal towers and the slow, majestic passage of the gardeners. The data streamed back, a torrent of information that Whisper synthesized into a coherent, if terrifyingly complex, picture. The planet was a single living circuit. The mycelial network wasn't just a root system, it was a planetary-scale nervous system and power grid. Energy, in a form that blurred the line between biological and gravitational, pulsed along the hyphal pathways. The gardeners were both nodes and programmers in this system, their low-frequency vibrations acting as commands, tuning the local gravitational constants with exquisite precision. Aris watched the feed from a drone hovering near a healthy gardener. The giant would place a limb, and a ripple of adjusted gravity would spread outwards, strengthening a weak stalk here, encouraging a spore river to divert nutrients there, pruning an overgrown shelf fungus by subtly increasing its own weight until parts of it crumbled. It was a dance of creation and destruction, all in service of balance. They're not just gardeners, Aris said, or tempering his fear. They're conductors, and the mycelium is their orchestra. A musical analogy is apt. The resonant frequencies maintain a stable song of gravity. The glitter blight introduces a discordant note that the system cannot autocorrect. The first major disruption happened on the third day. A deep, shuddering crack reverberated through the Azure Plateau, a sound of splintering cellulose on a monumental scale. Aris rushed to the viewport. One of the smaller gardeners, a sapling only 100 meters tall, was stumbling through a forest of puffballs, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. One of its bronze eyes was clouded with a milky purple film. Gardener designate Beta 7 shows advanced infection. Gravitric output is erratic. As Aris watched, Beta 7 tried to steady itself against a towering fungal spire. Instead of the gentle, focused pressure of a healing touch, a wild surge of gravity erupted from its limb. The spire didn't straighten, it compressed, its structure imploding with a sound like 1,000 trees snapping at once. A cloud of luminescent spores and pulverized fungus exploded outwards. Then the chaos turned towards Aris. The sapling, disoriented and in pain, flailed its other limb. A wave of distorted space-time shot out, invisible but devastating. Aris's sensor probes flickered and died, crushed into metallic paste by a sudden, localized gravity spike. The wave hit the edge of the Azure Plateau. The world tilted. Aris was thrown against the bulkhead as the entire horizon's whisper listed violently to one side. Alarms blared inside the ship. Warning: structural stress on landing gear. Local gravity fluctuating between 0.2 and 4.8 G. Whisper: emergency liftoff. Now! Aris scrambled into the pilot's chair, his hands flying over the controls. Calculating. Gravity field too volatile for safe ascent. Risk of catastrophic structural failure. Then we ride it out. Reinforce structural integrity fields. He gripped the arms of his chair, his body alternately feeling feather-light and then as if it were being pressed into a paste. Outside, the world was a nightmare. Chunks of the Azure Plateau's edge, unable to cope with the wildly shifting forces, sheared off and floated upwards before suddenly being slammed down into the valleys below. The cyan moss was torn and scarred. The sapling, Beta 7, let out another agonized groan and crashed away through the forest, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. As suddenly as it began, the gravity storm subsided. The ship settled back onto its landing gear with a final, groaning shudder. The alarms fell silent. The only sound was Aris's ragged breathing and the frantic beating of his heart. He sat there for a full minute, waiting for the adrenaline to subside. The problem was no longer academic. The blight wasn't just a disease, it was a weapon of mass destruction, and the gardeners were turning into unwilling carriers. He had to go out there. He had to get closer. An hour later, he was getting the Whisper's utility shuttle, the Stalwart, on a low, cautious flight over the blighted region. He didn't land. Instead, he used the shuttle's more powerful sensors to scan the area from above. The data was grim. The glitter blight had spread exponentially from the initial patch he'd found. Vast swathes of the vibrant fungal forest were now dull, crumbling, and stained with that iridescent purple. He saw more dead zones, places where the symbiotic creatures had been wiped out. But amidst the devastation, his scanner picked up something else. A pattern. The blight wasn't spreading randomly. It was following the major energy conduits of the mycelial network, like a parasite clinging to the arteries of its host. Whisper: overlay the blight growth with the gravitic resonance map. The holographic display shifted. The correlation was undeniable. The brightest patches of blight were centered on the strongest mycelial nodes, the very places the gardeners were most drawn to tend. It's baiting them, Aris realized with a sickening lurch. It sets up shop in a vital area, the gardeners come to fix it, and they get infected. It's a virus using the immune system against itself. He guided the shuttle lower, hovering over the edge of a large blight patch. He needed a sample, something from the front lines of this war. Donning a fully sealed HAZVA suit, he opened the airlock and descended on a tether, his boots touching the blighted ground. The purple growth pulsed faintly under his feet. The high-pitched whine was a constant, headache-inducing drone here. He took samples of the dead fungus, the soil, the air. His scanner chirped, highlighting a cluster of the dead, furry hexapods. As he moved towards them, his boot slipped on a patch of dull, gray, lichen-like growth. Caution, unidentified biomass. Just a lichen, he muttered, kicking it aside impatiently. It was brittle and unassuming, clinging to the underside of a crumbling fungal shelf. He focused on the more immediate threat, collecting his samples from the obvious devastation. As he was reeling himself back up to the shuttle, a movement caught his eye. One of the larger gardeners, the one he now thought of as the wounded giant from his first encounter, was lumbering towards a massive blight patch a kilometer away. Its infection had spread. One entire limb was now a deep, sickly purple, and its movements were even more labored. "No," Aris whispered, "don't." But the gardener's programming was too deeply ingrained. It saw a fault in the system, a dissonance in the song, and it was compelled to correct it. It raised its infected limb, aiming for the heart of the blight. "Whisper, hail it, broadcast a warning on all low-frequency channels, anything." Attempting, no response. The creature's receptors may be compromised. The root limb descended. The moment it touched the central mass of the glitter blight, the reaction was far more violent than the first time. The purple flare was blinding, even through the shuttle's filters. A shockwave of distorted gravity ripped outwards, not a ripple, but a tsunami. The stalwart was tossed like a toy. Aris was slammed against the interior hull, his head ringing. Alarms screamed. Through the viewport, he saw the wounded giant reel back, a colossal section of its infected limb now blackened and disintegrating, crumbling into dust. The pained groan that followed was a soul-wrenching sound of utter defeat. The giant collapsed, its massive form crashing down onto the fungal plane, sending a tremor through the very bedrock of the world. The blight patch, momentarily dimmed, now pulsed with a stronger, more confident light. It had felled a god. Aris lay on the deck, stunned, the taste of copper in his mouth. He had just witnessed a murder. The ecosystem was unraveling before his eyes, and his science, his sensors, his samples, they all felt hopelessly inadequate. He had the data, he understood the pattern, but he was no closer to a cure. The planet was dying, and he was just a man taking notes at its funeral. As the stalwart limped back to the Whisper, the discordant vibrations of the world seemed to mock him. The pulse was fading, replaced by the erratic, dying heartbeat of a patient in septic shock. Time, he knew, had just run out.